We all know that soldiers are lost in war. And when soldiers are lost in war, there are those left behind, the wives, the children's, and I lost my husband. I had 3 children.
The organization has deployed $69 million to support 3,000 scholars.
Exactly. So they would send, Pepsi care packages to the soldiers. And so the soldiers, to thank them, flew this flag on a combat mission and then sent it to the headquarters, and they had it in the headquarters building.
Jeanette, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, we're at Pepsi headquarters. I think it's amazing to be here.
This is awesome.
So
beautiful.
We just went and experienced the Rolling Remembrance culmination, the 60th stop. And I think it's important to quantify what is Rolling Remembrance. We've got the truck behind us. It's wrapped in the Rolling Remembrance insignia, and it also has the logo of Fallen Patriots, Children of Fallen Patriots, the organization that is near and dear to your heart for many different reasons that we're going to get into. But I want to talk about Fallen Patriots. I want to start there. What is the organization? Then we're going to get back to Rolling Remembrance. We're going to talk about your story, but let's start there. The mission of Fallen Patriots, Children of Fallen Patriots, is to provide education to those children who have lost a parent in the line of duty. And we can quantify line of duty a number of different ways, whether that be killed in action, whether that be illness, training. There's a lot of different variations, but talk about Fallen Patriots, its mission, its vision, and why that's so important.
Well, there's such a need. We all know that soldiers are lost in war. And when soldiers are lost in war, there are those left behind, the wives, the children's, and I lost my husband. I had 3 children, and I'm just one of many, thousands. And so we want to honor the memory of those lost by taking care of their children in a manner that those that are lost would want to take care of their own. They would want the best for their children. They would want to make sure that they had opportunities. So Children of Fallen Patriots provides that debt-free college education for those students who have lost, as you said, a parent in the line of duty. So that could be a combat death. It could be a service-related illness. Suicide is more recently we're seeing. And all of those children that are affected by that have the opportunity. They get some VA benefits, but that doesn't nearly cover what they need. We found that there's about $25,000 gap.
It's a massive number.
For every student, 4-year college, $25,000, and we cover that. Plus, we also want to make sure that these kids can dream big. I mean, that's what their parents would want. I know my husband wanted that for his sons. And so if a child can get into a great school, we want to give them that opportunity. We don't want them to have to limit it because of funding. So we will resource them. And we've had some kids, we have kids from all the states, go to all types of colleges. We also fund kids that, because we need kids in every area of service. So we fund kids who go to service-related schools. We fund kids who go to technical schools. My oldest son is a mechanic, and he went to a trade school. So there's lots of opportunities out there.
Let's talk about some of the numbers. 25,000 kids over the last 35 years have lost a parent. And we're talking about all branches of the military, all services. That's an incredible number.
Yeah, it's huge. And there's no central database for who those kids are. You just can't give out that kind of information. Clearly, we wanted to keep that confidential. The government wants to keep that confidential. But what we've gotten better by reaching out to those families early on and saying, we have some vetted organizations, Children of Fallen Patriots being one, can we share your information? So that gives us the opportunity to reach out to these families early on to establish a relationship with them so they know that we're available when the time comes for their kids to go to school.
Well, the organization has a why. I had the honor last night of being invited by everybody at Fallen Patriots to the gala in New York City. So the 3rd annual New York City gala. I didn't know what to expect, and in full transparency, I thought it was going to be a small group of people and in a restaurant. And I walked into an event
about 700 people.
700 people, and but my number was 703. So I'm fairly certain that by the nature there was maybe 1 or 2 more than that because of when I actually went to gut my ticket the night before. But wow, absolutely phenomenal. I think the number was 2.8 million
it
raised
was
last night at the event. I have not been to a lot of events in New York City over the last couple of years. None of us have, because of COVID, and everything's starting to come back over here in the last couple of months as everyone returns to the city. I was getting ready to go, and my wife said, "Who do you know?" And I said, "I have no idea who I know. I may not know anybody," because again, I thought it was a small thing. I knew no less than 30 people who over the years I've worked with, I've met in different things, and people from all different industries, all walks of life were there in that room last night to support this organization. But it started when David Kim and his wife Cynthia started the organization. We had a chance to speak with both of them. Amazing, amazing people. But David deployed to Panama in the Army, and he lost his very good friend, Sergeant Delaney Gibbs, who was killed in Panama months before, a couple of days before Christmas, but months before the birth of his daughter. And that sparked this idea. What was it? What did David say to himself of, I've got to do something about this? Because 21 years ago was when he said, I got to do it.
Yeah, I think it just always weighed on him knowing that this gal was growing up, and what opportunities would she have? Would she be taken care of? And that was important to him. And this was also at the time when it was right after 9/11, when he started thinking about this. And, he said, this is the time to start something, because there are going to be more families in this situation.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, Medal of Honor winner, was there last night. He was here today in the ceremony that we had, and we had the honor to listen to him speak, which is always exciting. I know you can listen to him on NBC and MSNBC, but it's great when he gets up in this kind of crowd. And he talked about education, and the organization David and Cynthia both talked last night and today about that education being the greatest gift that we can give. And Colonel Jacobs talked about the development of the next generation, and why that's so important, of where we are as a nation, and our freedom has to be protected by an educated population. When we look at these numbers, and we talked about the gap, and there's numbers out there with 625 million, and when you kind of add up all of the gap for each one of these students, the organization has deployed $69 million to support 3,000 scholars.
Exactly.
Talk about those 3,000. There were 21 of them there last night. Today, Abby Whitmer was up here speaking about her father,
right.
Navy F-18 pilot.
Right.
The impact that it has on these children.
Yeah. Well, I loved the way Colonel Jacobs mentioned that our future of our country relies on our youth. And we all think about it. That's true. I mean, our society, our children are going to be the ones who are going to take on from us, and we want to make sure that they're well educated, and we want to put our hope in their dreams and their aspirations, and educating them well is the way that we do that. And having companies like Pepsico jump on board and say, we believe in you. As Cynthia Kim mentioned, she said they started in their kitchen when they first started. My 3 sons were one of the first children that were some recipients in the early days when we worked out of their kitchen. And now, my children are in their 20s. They're successful because they've had Children of Fallen Patriots scholarships. They are successful young men, and they got emotional support, financial support from Children of Fallen Patriots, and I know I look to them for the future. They're going to be the people that make us proud of who we are as a country.
And there's financial impact here too. I mean,
huge.
We're going to talk in a minute about your story, but 53% of surviving spouses make less than $50,000 at the time of their spouse's loss, the loss of their spouse.
Well, a lot of these, and 98% of the ones left behind are women. So we wind up having these single moms with their children, and a lot of these women were following their husbands through their careers in the military and having to go to different places and move from a school to a deployment, back to another school. And it's hard to establish your own career that's, where you're really bringing in a lot of money. So a lot of these were either stay-at-home moms, or they worked in jobs where they moved from place to place. So they're not making a lot of money. And it's tough because the kids, these are servant-minded families. Their parents were in the military. They're all servant-minded, and even the children are raised that way. So a lot of these kids think, I shouldn't go to college because I don't want to burden my mom. I need to go out and start making money to help her. Maybe there's other siblings involved. So a lot of times we reach out to these kids and these moms so we can say, we want to support you so that you can reach your dreams.
So I introduced you. I said Jeanette, Colonel Jeanette McMahon, full bird colonel. You retired as 27 years, right?
That is correct.
27 years, 15 of them in operational aviation units, Chinook pilot.
Yes, it was very fun, very exciting.
If that helicopter's not leaking, get out.
Okay. That's what they used to say about Chinooks. What was great about this Pepsi event is the flag was flown by the 101st, and that was where I met my husband. We were both assigned in the 101st. We were both aviators.
Great aviation unit.
He was a CAV pilot. I was a Chinook pilot. And we met in church one Sunday. We went running that day. We went dancing a week later. And we were married within a year. It was a great, great love story.
You also went to West Point, class of 83. Talk about your drive to serve. Why make that decision? And especially in the early 80s when and those are early days of integration of women into the academy.
Yeah, it was when I was a freshman, the women who were the seniors were the first class. So there really weren't a lot of them out there leading the way. And certainly when I was in high school, I didn't know anybody. I was really looking for something, I was kind of an all-around generalist. I did pretty well in school. I liked sports. I was involved in the band. I was involved in Girl Scouts. I like camping. So the military kind of seemed like a great fit. I could do a little bit of all of that. A little drill and ceremony, a little camping. Didn't know about the wearing camouflage all over my face, but it was really exciting. And I had a twin brother and younger siblings, and I didn't want to burden my parents with college costs myself. So West Point seemed like a great option and a great reason to serve. And I'll tell you, when you're standing on the parade field that first day, and you've gotten issued your uniform that day and you've learned how to march and you're in that parade and you're on the plane, you realize this is something way bigger than you. This is history. This is a legacy. This is an incredible place to be, very patriotic. And I was in, that first step on the plane.
Yeah. I remember, I was an OCS guy, and after basic training, but you go through, they indoctrinate you very well.
It's an incredible transformation. I have to say, my youngest son went to he enlisted in the Army and went to the engineer basic training this a few summers ago. It was right after it was right when we were starting to reintroduce training after COVID, and I was so impressed by the way they handled that whole situation and the training that he did, and the way you could go on Facebook pages and see what they were doing in their training. It was really impressive. But for him, he saw such an incredible diversity within the people that enlisted with him, and how these people were gaining a foothold on life by joining the Army, and how much they gained from using the Army as a stepping stone to life. It was really an incredible experience for him to see that. So from an OCS perspective, I can say that's a great perspective to have.
Oh yeah.
To do an Army career.
And they do it in like 12 or 14 weeks.
Right. The quick course.
That's right. Let's talk about your husband, Michael. So you mentioned how you met and the instant love story, but November 27th, 2004, he was killed in action. And as you mentioned, you were left with 3 kids and serving as well. We always talk about spouses who are left who also don't have duty and in command of soldiers. But Michael, Thomas, Ricky, and yourself are there. Talk about the moment when you found out that you lost them.
Yeah, it was really a tough day, and it was we had actually had a really great weekend. It was right after Thanksgiving, and he had actually Mike had reached out to us, and we'd had a phone call, one of those rare phone calls, from the satellite phone from Afghanistan.
And in 2004, you didn't have all the infrastructure.
No. And he was commanding a unit too, so he made sure that all his soldiers always got to call home first. So we didn't hear from him that often, but luckily we all got to speak to him that day, and he called his dad and his sisters and everyone in the family. So it was really great. And then I had decided I was going to put up some decorations in front of the house. We were living in Hawaii at the time, and it was beautiful out. And my youngest son came out and he wanted to go swimming. And so I turned around and I saw these car doors shut, and we were on a quiet street, and I looked, and all of a sudden there were these Army guys walking up to my house. And you just kind of disbelieve that it's happening. You don't
in Class A's.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize them, and I kind of thought they're going to somebody else's house. Was my first, they're not. And then they're walking up my driveway, and then I realized the reality of, okay, this is happening. But then I wanted to be optimistic. Well, perhaps he's just injured, and I need to get to launch stool, and then I just immediately said, "Is he dead or not?" And these poor guys, they haven't even gotten up the driveway yet, and they said, "Well, let's talk a little bit, and let us tell you the story." And in fact, at that point, they didn't know. He was on a plane that was mission in action. They had taken off from one end of Afghanistan to the other. He was in the back, and so unfortunately, the plane wound up. They didn't make it, and everyone on board was killed in this accident. And I think you just kind of go into automatic survival mode. Especially as a mom with kids, you have to get them through it, and life has to kind of remain somewhat normal, going to school and kind of just moving forward if you can. But you're in that daze. You just function.
Last night, you and I had a chance to talk at the dinner, and one of the things that you mentioned to me, and that also has been brought up by a lot of the children as they got up and spoke last night, as Abby spoke here today, is that children have to grieve at all different points of their life. Your children were young, but every time they go into that different phase of their life, it processes differently.
It's a growth. It's a growth of grief, if that makes sense. I mean, we all know those stages of grief. You deny that it's happening, like I did. I didn't believe they were walking up to my door, and then you're angry about it, and you're sad, and then you accept it. But children, they go through those stages, but their brain actually develops and is now able to understand it at a different level, a different cognitive level. So when they're, the youngest was 4 when it happened, but when he was 16, he now had all these memories of his dad that were created from the stories that he heard or the videos that he saw. But he had to re-grieve it because now he's a young teenager. And then when as a 20-year-old young man, he also had to go through that process again. So it was a struggle for all of them. And then the moms, of course, they're going through this extended grieving because they've got to support their kids through it. Mm-hmm. So it really is difficult, I think. It's not, you're not just going to get over it. And people acknowledge that, and that's understandable, but for children, it really does last a lifetime.
Yeah. The last 24 hours or so, for me, has been very eye-opening. I spent 13 years and I deployed 5 times. I still talk about things every once in a while with my wife, and she'll be like, "You've never mentioned that before. Like, you experienced that?" Yeah, I did. When I was in, I had only the last few years we had a daughter. So the majority of my time when I was in, we actually didn't have kids, but we only had one. We have 2 young ones now, 3 and 6 months.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. You getting any sleep?
At 42, it's a lot more painful than I remember it being at 32. But one of the things that's been super eye-opening to me, and at times as I've sat last night and listened to people talk, I find myself emotional, is and I went home, and walked, and I got home late and went into my kids' room and just looked at them and was like, man, like, what if I wasn't here?
Yeah.
And then this morning, the 2 little ones were up, and I get up every morning and help my oldest one get out of school, even though she can help herself. It always makes me feel good to make her lunch and get yelled at by her because she's 13. So inevitably I did something wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
But she still leaves, and I go,
right.
It is what it is. But all I could think about was, how I was going to come here. We were going to have this conversation, and and I found myself getting, emotional at times, because it's like, how can you not be here with these little kids? And what would life be like?
You miss those moments
if I wasn't there?
I'll tell you, there are certain times when it really hits me. I think for years I could not watch the commercials where they showed like the soldier coming home, or the surprise reveal when the soldier's in the stadium and his family runs out. He doesn't expect them to be there. Those were the hardest to watch because we didn't get the homecoming. and that was hard when you're seeing that year after year after year. And I know, like, for the kids, like my oldest son, he's 33 now, and he just got married last year. And it was such a wonderful ceremony. For him, it was so important to set up a chair, and he had his dad's jacket and his Stetson on the chair.
Wow.
And he and his wife brought a flower over. It's important for them to remember their dad in a way that still, they're not going to ever forget. They're always going to include his memory. They certainly wish they could share. But, they also know that we're living and they're living, and they have to live it well. And that's what their dad would want. And so they've developed, like, my son has great relationship with his wife's dad. And I just recently remarried last year, and he's got a great relationship with my husband now. And it's wonderful. It's really great to be able to. And I think it's so wonderful because my current husband, he's so good about letting me talk about it,
right,
and to live it and know that it's a part of me. That will always be there. It's a part of my kids. He actually gave a Christmas present for my 3 boys. He gave them each a Stetson of their own.
Wow.
That he outfitted with all their dad's insignia.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this concept of you dealing with the loss and having to grieve the loss, but also at the same time being thankful for what you had and for the experiences that you had with somebody before you lose them.
Yeah. Holding on to those memories is important, and having the pictures and having the memorial cabinet in the house, and just being able to talk about it and mention it at times. It's important.
Well, let's talk about Rolling Remembrance.
This was great.
We've got the truck behind us. I mentioned that this was the 60th out of 60 stops. Huge shout out to Pepsico here for not only their support to Fallen Patriots, but also for allowing us to set up here and keeping the truck here. We had to fend off the team here from cleaning everything up for a little while, but for keeping the truck here for this amazing backdrop here at Pepsi headquarters. 30 days on the road. It started in Seattle, made its way, and I want you to tell the story of the flag here, but the flag started in Seattle and made its way here to New York. What is Rolling Remembrance, and why has that become a staple for PepsiCo and their support to Fallen Patriots?
Yeah, 9 years now, and what's great is the flag was originally flown by the brother of Jim Farrell, who a friend of his was working here, and her brother was deployed, and so they would send, Pepsi care packages to the soldiers. And so the soldiers, to thank them, flew this flag on a combat mission and then sent it to the headquarters, and they had it in the headquarters building. And Jim tells the story about how he was thinking one day, he was part of the Valor program for Pepsi to give back to veterans, and so he thought, how can we involve more of the people in Pepsi, because Pepsi's such a large company and it's so distributed across the country. And he passed the flag in the headquarters building, and he thought, he's a transportation guy, and he said, I'll bet you we have the resources to kind of relay this flag around the country. And he mentioned it to a few people, and the ball got rolling, so to speak, no pun intended. And as he says, it was to remember those that were lost. And that was the key thing. So Rolling Remembrance was born. And it was great for me this year because I actually flew out to Seattle for the kickoff.
For the start.
So I was at the beginning and at the end. And what was really great about the beginning is that it stops at 60 places across the country. So it just literally drives from state to state, stopping at different PepsiCo different locations, and each place they have an event. The drivers change out. All the drivers are veterans, and every time they do a fundraiser at each of these events, that goes into the big pot, and in the end, they donate that all to Children of Fallen Patriots. So the first year, they had like 25,000 that they donated. This year, 300,000. You add that up over 9 years, you're like 2 million.
Yeah,
so it's just incredible what they've done. And how many of our kids that's supporting is wonderful. And we have a great ratio. We have such a generous board of directors that pay like our admin costs that we can take, nearly all those proceeds, and it all goes towards, the children's scholarships and funding.
96%.
Yeah, we have a great record on that.
And it's not just tuition. I think it's important. College tuition is astronomical, but so is room and board and costs of and books and everything else. And so there's an important fact here too, that there is a tremendous amount of support that is being given to the scholars in terms of the other support, financial support that they need just to live and go to school.
Right. We can cover room and board, and the great thing is that it's financial, and that's huge. But all of the folks that we hire are scholarship administrators, are Gold Star kids themselves, and have received scholarships from us. So there is an immediate connection between, our scholarship administrators and the students that we're supporting. Sometimes they don't even have to talk. They don't even talk about it, but they know. And they create these bonds and these relationships and networks amongst themselves that's really supportive. And now that we've been doing this for 20 years, so we have kids that are, 15, 20, 10 years into it, and are now starting to mentor some of our younger kids just graduating. So it's really great to see this process grow upon itself.
I want to talk about the need here for a second, because we got to look at the timeline. You referenced it about the curve. Okay, and it's easy to sit here and say, well, where are we going to go from here? The military is not in a declared combat. We don't have forces deployed all over the world.
We're not at war, so
We're not
why do we need to
lose
support?
many people.
Right. But how many kids are already in the pipeline based on prior losses? Because some of these kids were babies when they lost their parents. So we have this, pipeline. We keep their ages in our system so we can track, when the need will occur during their lifetime and how our program will be affected by that. And we have many years still. We have 12,000 kids in our system. We know there's 25,000 out there.
So many kids.
We're trying to, and this is a great way to get the word out. Pepsico is such a huge company that it touches so many lives, that if people know about Children of Fallen Patriots and what we can do for these children who, are in a position to receive our benefits, then we want to get that word out.
Yeah. How do you get involved? And what's the goal here over the next year, for the organization?
Well, we've continued to grow each year. Like I said, when I first saw the organization, we were working out of the Kim's kitchen, and now we have a full staff of employees. If we can continue to increase the number of scholarships we give each year, that would be great. And we've been lucky; we've never had to turn anyone away so far, and keeping our fingers crossed it stays that way.
Well, it's been an absolutely amazing organization that I've come to know over the last couple of months as we've planned this, as I mentioned, the last 24 hours, not only from the experience to meet everybody last night and then here today with the Rolling Remembrance event, has just impacted my life. And I always say that I do these podcasts, and a lot of times I don't know what I might expect, when I start to get into them, and each one is their own experience, and some of them move you, to the core. And this was certainly one of those ones over the last day or so that I didn't know what to expect when I got into it, and I feel very differently now, and moved in a way that I even though I served and I lost many friends and saw their families go through what you did. It just never was put in this perspective for me.
Yeah, I think even for me, having gone through the loss myself and having had my kids had the scholarships, and then you're kind of living your life. And I was actually coaching and teaching for about 10 years. And Cynthia reached out to me and said, would you like to come work for us? And I thought it would be such a great way to pay it forward for, for the blessings that we had received. And I went to an event. It was one of the first events I went to when I was with Children of Fallen Patriots. And we had set up a table, a resource room. It was actually at the Snowball Express with Gary Sinise. And we set up a resource room table. And all these moms and their kids were coming to our table. Over the course of 2 days, hundreds of parents were coming through, and they didn't know about Children of Fallen Patriots, and they were signing up for our programs. And these are all families whose kids are high school age, because that's the age of the kids that come to this program. So these are kids that are getting ready to go to school now. And so it was so impactful to me to see these moms and know how important it was for them to be able to have these resources available for their kids, for their children.
Well, I encourage everyone who listens to this to get involved. Organization is Fallen Patriots, Children of Fallen Patriots. We've heard it used synonymously over in the last couple of days, but fallenpatriots.org. Go there, check it out, find a way to be involved. You don't have to give $1 million. You don't have to give $100,000. You can give whatever you're comfortable with. There's an upcoming event not far from here in Greenwich, Connecticut, here later
in
this
November.
summer, in November, and then next year the New York City event again in May. So you can count me in to be at both of those events.
And if you go to that website, fallenpatriots.org, if you're a student who's eligible, simple one click, you can enroll. It's so easy. All you have to give us is really a name and contact information, and we'll contact you and help you walk you through it. So it's really made to be simple. Same with donation, one click donation. So we try and make it easy for everybody.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
So 12,000 identified, 25,000 are out there. We owe it to those who've given the ultimate sacrifice to make our nation free. We have a long way to go, and it's going to take all of us to continue to do that. So, Jeanette, Colonel McMahon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Fran, for having me. It was wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to get the word out, and we appreciate that you're willing to do it.
Absolutely. Beautiful day here. So, beautiful day, beautiful spot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Quite welcome. It was a pleasure.
American Jedburghs went out to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As a former member of Special Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast donates a percentage of all proceeds to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.